407.13 non-reinsured supplemental insurance, non-reinsured supplemental policy. Electric copy of Microsoft Office compatible format with the new revived and non-reinsured supplemental policy related material with the mate must be with at least 150 days prior to the first sale of the closing date. Applicable to non-reinsured supplemental policy at a minimum example to demonstrate how liability to identify with the calculated over the different scenarios must include with the electronic copies for the non-reinsured supplemental must be sent with the Deputy Administrator of the Product Management or successor at the Deputy Administrator of the RMA, USDA.gov. The RMA will review the non-reinsured state supplemental policies in the condition from the paragraph C1 through 5. Section 5 of Federal Crop Reinsurance Corporation notify the AIP for the non-reinsured supplemental policy if they are non-reinsured supplemental policy result of the denial of reinsurance, AOI subsidy, risk subsidy on underlying federal crop insurance reinsured policy unless the underlying federal crop federal crop insured corporation policy sold with the AIP for the underlying federal crop insurance corporation reinsured policy sold with another AIP ABI sold with the non-reinsured supplemental policy may be required to pay federal crop insurance corporation amount equal to reinsurance AOI subsidy with a risk subsidy for the underlying federal crop insurance crop policy. Non-reinsurance policy material increases shift of the risk for the underlying policy plan with the insurance reinsured with the Federal Crop Insurance Corporation. National reinsured supplemental policy will consider the material increased shift risk underlying with the policy plan. Insurance reinsured with the Federal Crop Insurance Corporation RMA determines it. Creating normal moral hazards such as financial incentive of the policyholder to behave in a way increase the numbers of the size losses. Result of the underlying Federal Crop Insurance Corporation policy either the taking on loss sooner and paying the larger identified with would otherwise be allowed with the terms and conditions underlying reinsured policy, or allow for combined identities between the underlying Federal Crop Insurance Corporation and reinsurance policy with the non-reinsured supplemental excess of the value of the producer would reasonably expect for the receipt of the insured commodity with the normal crop was produced and sold at a reasonable market price. Non-reinsured supplemental must include the language clearly identified that no identity will be paid extra for the initial value insured with commodity. National non-reinsured supplemental reduced supplement limits of the right insured with respect to the underlying policy insured with reinsured with the Federal Crop Insurance Corporation. Non-resource reinsured supplemental policy will consider the reduced limits of the rights of the insured with respect to the underlying policy plan issued with the RMA to determine effects of the alter preempts or determine the conditions of the underlying policy procedures issued with Federal Crop Reinsurance Corporation. Non-reinsured supplemental disrupts the marketplace. Non-reinsured supplemental policy considered with the disrupt of the marketplace RMA. Determine encourage planning for more acreage insured with the commodity excess for the normal marketplace, demanding adverse effects of the sale of administration reinsured policy, undermines producer confidence of the federal crop insurance program, harm public perception, federal crop insurance program, non-reinsured supplemental impermissible rebate, non-reinsured reinsured supplemental may consider the impermissible rebate. RMA determines premium rate charge of the insufficient cover the expected loss of reasonable revenue reserve if it offers over the benefit with the generally provided cost. RMA will spend not less than 75 days more with the first closing date with a provided notice of the RMA unable to respond with the time frame allotted. Non-reinsured supplemental policy RMA will be needed to supplemented one every 5 years will change with a non-reinsured supplemental underlying policy once the change were made either policy 5-year period has concluded with a non-year reinsured supplemental must be resubmitted for review. Subpart W reserve. Subpart X interpretation statutory provisions publicly provisions and procedures. 407.65 Definition Act. The Federal Crop Insurance Act for the approved insurance provided by the previous insurance company has been approved with the Federal Crop Insurance Corporation. Sole service the Federal Crop Insurance policy under reinsurance agreement with Federal Crop Insurance Corporation. Federal Crop Insurance Corporation, wholly owned government corporation with the United States with the Department of Agriculture. Federal Crop Insurance Corporation interpretation policy provisions notified, not codified, code federal regulations, procedure for the administrative Federal Crop Insurance Program. Final agency determined immediately for the general applicable regarding federal crop insurance interpretation provisions act with the regulation codified with its code of federal regulations included certainly policy provisions and which applicable all participation in federal crop insurance program appeals and processes. The NAD stands for USDA National Appeals Division, Title 7 CFR 11. Participants, applicant, federal crop insurance insured with approved insurance provider, agent, loss adjuster with the employee on the contract procedure, federal crop insurance corporation issue handbooks, manuals, memorandum, bulletins for any crop insurance policy reinsured federal crop insurance corporation. The process started with the filing complaint notice of appeals over the rest of the document commences appeals process ends with the adjudicature body issuing its decision includes necessary activity to discover the occurred with the time frame. RMA stands for Risk Management Agency of the United States Department of Agriculture. U requests a final agency determination Federal Crop Insurance Corporation. 407-676 Basic Applicability Regulation containing within the part prescribed the rules, criteria for obtaining final agency determination Federal Crop Insurance Corporation. Federal Crop Insurance Corporation provide final agency determination Federal Crop Insurance Corporation interpretation as applicable statutory, regulatory, other policy provisions proceed with the will effect with the four most recent crop years. From the crop year when request was submitted, for example, the request received in the 2014 crop year, Federal Crop Insurance Corporation considered requests 2014, 2013, 2012, 2011 crop years. Federal Crop Insurance Corporation determines requests outside the scope of the years authorized in paragraph A1 section will be notified 30 days for the day of the receipt in Federal Crop Insurance Corporation. Its statutory, regulatory, other policy provision procedures have changed with the time period of the interpretation. You must submit a simple separate request for each of the policy provision procedure by the year. For example, if you seek an interpretation by 6B of the small grain crop and provisions for 212 through 215 crop years, for the policy and provision provided starting with the 2014 crop years must submit the two requests, one with the 2012-2013 crop years and another 2014-2015 crop years. With respect to final agency determination, Federal Crop Insurance Corporation interpretation dispute with the participant involved with the final agency determination of the Federal Crop Insurance Corporation interpretation. Parties are required to seek interpretation of the dispute provision. Federal Crop Insurance Corporation accordance with subpart of the may require the parties and to stay proceeding interpretation provided with the scope of the proceedings that have been initiated and final agency determination. Federal Crop Insurance Corporation and may take the form of a written interpretation and sole discretion. Federal Crop Insurance Corporation may take form testimony from any employee risk management agency express authorized writing provided with the interpretation policy procedure on behalf of the Federal Crop Insurance Corporation. All written final agency determined in Federal Crop Insurance Corporation binding our participants in Federal Crop Insurance Program crop years policy provisions are in effect. Written Federal Crop Insurance Corporation interpretation testimony employed with the risk management agency and our binding parties of the dispute will include arbitrator, meditator, judge, the National Association Department of Agricultural. Federal requests of final agency determination. Federal Crop Insurance Corporation, when required, this support failure non-NAD arbitrator and mediator judge adhere with the final agency determination. Federal Crop Insurance Corporation interpretation provided under the subpart result of the notification. Award agreement, arbitration, mediation in accordance with the provision of mediation, arbitration, reconsideration, administrative of the judge review, such as a similar section crop insurance policy. If either part believe the award discussion rendered with the NAD with the arbitrator with the meditator based on the dispute with the provision of the failure to request final agency determination for Federal Crop Insurance Corporation added mediator judge for decision not in accordance with final agency determination Federal Crop Insurance Corporation interpretation rendered respect to disputed precision the party may request Federal Crop Insurance Corporation review matter determination final agency Federal Crop interpretation shall have sought with accordance with 407-67. Request should be submitted one of the methods contained 407-67A1. Federal Crop Insurance Corporation in terms of the final agency. Federal Crop Insurance Corporation should have been sought with which was not decision in accordance with the final agency determination. Federal Crop Insurance Corporation interpretation rendered with the dispute provision award with the automatically nullified each party of the Federal Crop Insurance Corporation. Termination filed agency with the termination Federal Crop Insurance Corporation shall have sought, which is not decision of not in accordance with final agency termination Federal Crop Insurance Corporation interpretation rendered with respect to the disputed provision of the NAD according with Title 7 CFR Part 11. All written final agencies determined with the risk management agency website consider the matters of the general applicable that are not acceptable in the NAD with before obtaining review of the final agency determined you must obtain with the administrative final determination directive of the NAD issued where the final agency determination matter of the general applicability respective of the administrative review of the Federal Crop Insurance Corporation interpretation either part of the proceeding does not agree with the written Federal Crop Insurance interpretation request of the administrative review may be filed in accordance with Title 7 CFR Part 400 Subpart J. Administrative review Federal Crop Insurance Corporation such request must be submitted in accordance with 476(7)(a). Federal Crop Insurance Corporation not accept the request administrative review of the NAD with the mediator arbiter Risk Management Agency Office of Deputy for the Administrative of the Product Management. It will determine when the request administrative of the review not later than 30 days after the receipt of the request, read regardless of whether you saw with the administrative review of the appeal of the Federal Crop Insurance interpretation of the NAD in accordance with Title 7 CFR Part 11. 767 request application request the final agency for the Federal Crop Insurance Corporation submitted under the subpart must maybe for the deputy administrator for the guidelines provided with the risk management agency website through one of the following methods of the writing with certified mail with the overnight delivery the deputy administrator for the risk management agency for the Department of Agricultural Beacon facility stop at 0801 room 421 box 4 19205 Kansas City Missouri 641416205. The vast amount with 816 and 263-0449. Electronic command state with the seeking of the final agency determination Federal Crop Insurance Corporation identified with the quote provision regulation procedure for the policy for the provision requesting final agency determination Federal Crop interpretation. Containing no more than one request for the interpretation, you must separate with the request of the provision with more than one provision issued for example, the distributed interpretation paragraph 3, lost adjustment manual 1 request interpretation required. If the dispute with interpretation paragraph 3, lost adjustment manual paragraph 2 with the macadamium nut loss adjustment of the standard handbook separated with the request for the interpretation as required. See with the crop year of the plan issuance for the applicant to request see with the name of the draft, the telephone number, the contact person on the request, containing the detailed information specific provision of the act regulation receive of the policy provision request and interpretation being requested, not capable of specific fact alleged conduct hypothetical situations on the request will be returned to the requester without consideration. You must adhere to the Federal Crop Insurance Corporation request the final agency determination. Federal Crop Insurance Corporation interpretation will be due to the judicial review of the meditation arbitration. You must identify the type of proceeding meditation arbitration litigation applicable to the interpretation will be due to the day of the proceeding scheduled at the beginning. The earliest possible the day of the proceedings will be like to being specific date with not established. The name of the address, the telephone number, the applicable with the fax number, the email address with the contact person on both parties of the dispute. If the parties electively expected with the review process available to the AAA rules appeal with the NAD with it must be requested submitted no later than 90 days before the day of the mediation arbitration litigation proceeding with the interpretation will be usually scheduled at the beginning. If the rules of the court meditation arbitration require the interpretation prior to the date of the proceeding begins with 90 days for the number of the days required prior to the date proceeding. For example, if you can require interpretation 20 days prior to the date of the proceeding begins, you must submit with 110 days before proceeding is scheduled to begin. Third, timely submit a request of the final agency for the Federal Crop Insurance Corporation interpretation. Federal Crop Insurance Corporation termination or interpretation may be kept for the request without timely submitted. Notification agreement with the award of corns. 40767 the no final agency for the termination Federal Crop Insurance Corporation provided. Nothing in the paragraph but even the section with the joining with the meditation arbitration for the litigation proceeded as an issue of the rise required of the final agency determination Federal Crop Insurance Corporation. The interpretation mediator or arbitrator judge of the magistrate must properly be the final agency for the determination Federal Crop Insurance Corporation interpretation according to 476A. Federal Crop Insurance sole discretion authorized person will provide oral written final agency for the determination Federal Crop Insurance Corporation as appropriate. In a decision of settlement with a result of the mediation, arbitration, litigation proceeding with the Federal Crop Insurance Corporation, file agency determination, Federal Crop Insurance Corporation, nullified in accordance with 40766. Multipliers involved with a having opposing interpretation, joint request to file agency determination, Federal Crop Insurance Corporation, including both requesters' interpretation, one with the request incurs with the multi-insurer of the persons of the parties of the dispute, with the request for the final agency determination, Federal Crop Insurance Corporation, interpretation applied with one of the requests submitted with the insurer of the person submitted, and says separate request for each of the person. In this case, the information required for the section must provide each reason. 40768 Federal Crop Insurance Obligations. Federal Crop Insurance can provide with the final agency federal crop interpretation for any of the requests regarding the contains sole specific factual information, situation, cases, acts with the failure to act in any particle under the term of the policy proceed with the reinsurance agreement. Federal Crop Insurance Corporation will not consider specific factual information, situations, case, financial agency determining Federal Crop Insurance Corporation interpretation. Federal Crop Insurance Corporation consider the example of hypotheticals provided with the interpretation because of the fact specific and can be construed with the finding over the fact with the Federal Crop Insurance Corporation. Example of the hypothetical required illustrate with the interpretation. We'll provide example of the interpretation. In sole judgment, Federal Crop Insurance Corporation, where it's unclear and ambiguous and incomplete, will not provide final agency determination. Federal Crop Insurance Corporation interpretation will notify you within 30 days of the receipt. Federal Crop Insurance Corporation quote the clearly ambiguous and incomplete. In Federal Crop Insurance Corporation, you with the request unclear with the ambiguous incomplete with the paragraph B with the section 90-day time period with the Federal Crop Insurance Corporation provide with a response stop of the day with the Federal Crop Insurance Corporation notifies 1 day with the Federal Crop Insurance Corporation receive with the clear with the complete with the ambiguous result of the Federal Crop Insurance balance for the day with the remaining 90-day time period with it provides a response with you the example of the Federal Crop Insurance request for the final agency determination on January 10th. On February 10th, Federal Crop Insurance notified of the request unclear with the March of the Federal Crop Insurance Corporation received the clarified request for the meets requirement of the Federal Crop Insurance Corporation provide final agency determination. Federal Crop Insurance Corporation has 60 days with the March 10th balance of the 90-day time period provided response. The Federal Crop Insurance Corporation reserve the right to modify the request. Federal Crop Insurance Corporation determine the request of final agency determination with the request of the Federal Crop interpretation, vice versa. Federal Crop will provide with the written final agency of the Federal Crop interpretation within 90 days of the day of the receipt request for the meets over the requirements of 476.77. Federal Crop Insurance does not provide within 90 days of the receipt of the request. Make sure that the interpretation and correct the applicable copy or have with an instant interpretation of the general applicable will not bind any of the program participation. In addition, in this case, joint request final agency determination, Federal Crop Insurance Corporation, Federal Crop Insurance does not respond within 90 days of neither party assume the interpretation is correct. Federal Crop Insurance published at any agency determined specify the number of the direct risk management agency website because general applicable for the all programs participations. Federal Crop Insurance Corporation public interpretation because it is not applicable to the parties of the dispute with the reason for providing copy to Federal Crop Insurance Corporation. All parties wishing final agency determination. Federal Crop Insurance Corporation. Federal Crop Insurance Corporation will evaluate insurance provided agent loss adjuster relates to the performance of the following. Federal Crop Insurance Corporation policy provision interpretation is not included in analysis on whether the insured provider, agent, loss adjuster with the compliance with policy provision procedure in question. And that completes the reading of Title 7, Subpart B, Regulations of Agricultural, Chapter 4, Federal Crop Insurance Corporation and Agricultural General Administrative Regulations.